All right. Mike Hilmes, the Kingdom Financial. Such a joy to have you. Welcome to the Work and Worldview podcast.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
Appreciate you coming on. And shout out to Anita Toth for connecting us.
Yes. He is amazing.
Anita is amazing, and I'm thankful for her.
Yes, for sure.
So, like we begin our interviews. So, Mike, tell me a little bit about the values you had growing up in the home you were raised in. What was that environment like? Was it a religious environment, non-religious environment?
Yeah, great question, Jonathan. I grew up in a Catholic home. So my mother and father both were raised Catholic. We went to Catholic school, or I'm sorry, we didn't go to Catholic school. We went to public high school, sorry, public grade school, public high school. But we did go to, we went to mass every Sunday. And, growing up, we went to religion on Wednesdays. But the one thing I can remember from my youth, as far as values go, my mother is an amazing woman. She's one that will do anything for anybody. But I think there was definitely I have definitely an interesting family background. How about I put it that way, right? So there's definitely things that I was exposed to early in my life that I would never want my children or my children not exposed to, blessedly, that I was exposed to. And that isn't a knock on my parents. It's just a fact of where we were at, where they were at in their lives, and kind of the people they hung out with, right? So there was things, my youth was surrounded by, I felt like, a lot of hypocrisy, and not just from necessarily just my family, but people that would talk the talk but not walk the walk, right? So, but yeah, that was my youth a lot. So as I was growing up and I saw those examples of people that were very successful in businesses, but out behind closed doors, they were not very good people. That really shaped me early in my life. That I thought, this church thing might be good for some people, but man, these people that I'm following don't walk the walk. And they just talk the talk. And I think that really shaped me early in my life as far as values go. And my mother, it's tough for me to always talk about that, because my mom is such an amazing person, and, just so caring, and always, and I think when I talk about that, it kind of hurts her a little bit.
Mm,
But at the same time, I always say that, people are equipped, the Lord equips you with what you need to be equipped with, right? And I think, some of that stuff that I went through in my youth that maybe looking back on wasn't the best for me or for my brothers. I think that was part of his story, right? I think that's part of kind of how we go through life. So,
sure. So curious, at a young age, you sort of determine that there's this hypocrisy, that you're seeing. So what was the root of, like, how were you able to make that determination?
I mean, for me, it was just, people would say one thing and do another. It's the classic, do as I say, not as I do, right? I mean, that's what I heard that a lot growing up, or really, um, people in business. I mean, I had an uncle that was a very, very successful business owner. But like when I was in high school and grade school, I mean, I partied and did things with him that I shouldn't have been doing as a teenager. So I kind of had a distorted view of success. I kind of had a distorted view of what it looked like to be successful, and unfortunately, that led me down um, not good things that I was doing in grade school and high school and college.
College now, you're sort of analyzing, picking a major, trying to choose a career, right?
hmm
What values were at work then as your
Yeah, I always knew, actually, it's kind of crazy, from like grade school. I always knew I wanted to be an accountant, which is weird to say out loud. And the reason is my it's so funny. My mom's stepbrother,
Mhm,
uh, he ended up, he got it. He was a CPA. He got out of college. I remember to this day. I don't know how old I was or whatever. I was in grade school, but he basically graduated college as a CPA. He had this sweet red red car and like this really, really attractive girlfriend, and I was like, I want to be that guy, right? Which is hilarious to say now out loud as an accountant, right? Like, that is not the picture of an actual accountant. But that got me to I took accounting 101 or accounting 1, I think it was, at my high
mhm,
school as a freshman,
mhm,
and I loved it. And
mhm.
basically, looking back on it now, it's pretty much like balancing a checkbook is pretty much what, like, the skill level it took to really accelerate that class. But it was the first class in my career ever that I got an A+ in. So I was never that great of a student, never really applied myself all that much, but I got an A+ in that class as a freshman, and they got a big old thick workbook, and I had the whole workbook done like 6 months into the class, like,
Mm,
halfway through the class, or whatever, halfway through the semester.
uh-huh.
I had the whole workbook done.
Wow.
um, and I took all the accounting classes I could in high school, then in college, and I loved it. And I just fell in love with accounting at that time. And
Wow.
so, and I love the, I guess, like the precision of accounting, like like this is facts, you know what I mean? Like this is definite, but also, the tax side and the business side of it, where you can really, like I tell clients all the time right now, like you can determine what you pay the IRS at the end of the year. And it isn't by being a criminal, it's because you actually strategize and plan, right? And there's ways you can plan and strategize. But even back then, I knew that I liked accounting for that reason, and I love helping people. That's one of the biggest joys I got from the very beginning of my
Mhm,
career, is just being a blessing to people.
mhm.
Most people, I'm the overstepping accountant now, and I'm the guy that like loves to help people in all areas of their finances, and that's kind of weird, right? I mean, it's kind of a weird,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
So not many people can say their freshman year of high school, they put their finger
yeah,
on their career. That's pretty amazing, right?
yes, yes, and it was funny in college. I actually had in my high school years, anyways. As far as the faith walk though, yeah, my mom in high school, she said after we became 16, she said, "Now you boys you don't ever have to go to church." Basically, like once you're in high school, she said, "You don't have to go to church unless you want to." Well, unfortunately, I don't think a 15-year-old is adequate enough to make that decision. So me and my brothers, all of us turned away from the church at that time.
Mm,
Which, once again, I don't fault my parents, but that decision at a 15-year-old is, I think most 15-year-olds are going to make that decision like we made, which stinks to say out loud. So yeah, then I fell away from the faith a lot. Grade school, high school, and college were all, as I say, were the heathen days. Definitely my values. I say, I say I still have values, but I definitely didn't treat women the way that the Lord teaches us to treat women, right? I definitely didn't treat my body the way that I should treat my body. But I also didn't, I guess in my head, I would say I wasn't a bad guy. I know it sounds funny to try to justify your sin looking back on it now, but I still had values. I didn't cheat people. I didn't, rob people, but I still was definitely not proud of the man I was then.
sure.
So,
So what was the turning point to that?
well, in college, I actually, just part of that journey in college, I actually had two different college professors because I definitely wasn't the stereotypical accountant in college. I had two different college professors sit down with me and say, "Mike, you can probably just get a business degree for what you're going to do eventually." And I was like, "Well, what's that supposed to mean?" They're like, "You're going to go into sales. You'll never be an accountant. There's no way you'll be able to sit and, just, sit in a cubicle and work." Right. Which there was a little bit of, they're actually accurate. But I'm also stubborn. So whenever they both told me I couldn't, I was like, "Oh yeah, watch this." So that's part of my story really is people doubting me fuels me, right?
Mm,
People saying like, "Mike, are you sure you can do that?" My mother, I love my mother to death. She's one of my biggest encouragers. But there's also been times in my life where she doubted certain things, and that's like that even helped me even more than encouraging me at that time. Looking back on it, as as much as you want your mom always to support you. Looking back on it, there's been times in my career, and it's like, thank you for questioning what I was doing, because the Lord gave me this strong vision, and the Lord's blessed me with to be a visionary, and I know that now. But there's
mhm.
times in my life where I question, like, Lord, why do you give me all these big dreams and all these big goals whenever, how am I going to accomplish it? But looking back in college, like I said, that those two different professors, and they were right. But anyway, so I graduated, I got out of school, got a job at my first CPA firm. And within about 6 months, I realized what they were talking about, right? Because I was not the stereotypical accountant that's just going to sit in a cubicle. I was the guy in my first year at the first CPA firm I worked at. I was the guy that within 3 or 4 months of being there, I was already applying for the next chair. There's like three in every little cubicle. There was like three people in each cubicle, right? It's like the accounting clerk, where most people sat and did that job for 10 or 15 years. And then you moved up second chair, then you became a supervisor. Well, I applied for the second chair within the first 3 months of working there and ended up moving up. I was applying with people that had been worked there for 10 or 15 years. And then I was a supervisor within the first year of working there, just because
Wow.
I was that guy, right? That just, I always wanted to do more and achieve more. And yeah, that was my first
How
CPA
did that go
firm.
over with the
Yeah.
peers?
They all thought I was crazy. It's kind of similar to those accounting professors I had, right? They're like, "What are you thinking? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, if that's the next spot, then I'm going to do that."
Right.
So, and a lot of times in my career, and even in my personal, whenever when the Lord gives you the ability and drive to do what I feel like He's called me to do, I kind of make people uncomfortable, right? Knowing like I'm doing, like very focused, I guess. When I get very focused on something, yeah, I think that's an amazing skill that the Lord's, blessed me with.
That's awesome. So you referred to just a little while ago, you referred to, You get these sort of visions and ideas on the direction you should go, and obviously, when you're sitting in that first seat at the CPA office, you realize, okay, I need to move to the next. I need to move to the next. Right? Tell me about,
Yes.
as you progressed in your career. What did some of those sort of very clear visions or goals or guidelines? What did that look like? Tell me about the progression of those.
Well, that's a great question. So I felt the Lord calling me to start my own business
Hmm.
probably almost 20 years ago. But as I actually about '05, yeah. So '03 is when I first started my first CPA firm. I was there for a couple years, and then '06 anyway, started and then I started kind of starting the progression of moving through my career. I was blessed with the opportunity. I say blessed. I was blessed with the opportunity of being laid off or fired from 5 different of those CPA firms after that first one. And I say blessed because I felt like I should start my own business, right? I loved entrepreneurship. I loved helping people in business, but I was too scared, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
too scared to start my own business. And
Hmm.
after I got married, my wife stayed home with our first son, and I was scared to start my own business then. And then I got laid off from another place and had a second son. And I'm like, well, then I definitely can't, start my own business now, right?
Hmm.
So what I'll say is the Lord has given me so many visions, and the one I didn't listen to, on top of the ones that I did listen to, one I didn't listen to longest was starting my own business. I built a lot of other people's dreams
Hmm.
during that time period.
Hmm.
Like my goals and dreams, I would wrap up into the people I worked for, right, and I would
Let me
help
pause you
them
right
hit.
there. Yeah, let me pause you
Yes,
right
sir.
there for a second.
Yes.
So, what were some of the values during that phase that were keeping you from moving toward, right? Because you were holding on to some and operating against some sort of value, right?
Yeah.
That kept you in this place working for somebody else. So, tell me a little bit about that, because I think people might identify with that.
Yeah. So for me, it was all about security.
Hmm.
Having that. I valued security at that time, right? I liked that safe, secure income. I liked the benefits that I had at that time.
Hmm.
But looking back on it now, those were just band-aids to the real, the real problem, right? Is that and the reason why, I'll just tell you, the reason why I was let go or, laid off or fired, or however you want to thought it, it was because I had a vision for that business owner, right? I'd say, I'm like, hey, you need to start this other line of, you need to start this advisory work, through your
Sure.
accounting firm. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? No, we don't.
Mhm.
Hey, you need to be able to give me a laptop, right, and put the tax program on there so I can go around to all these real estate offices and just do 20, 30 tax returns in one day, sit in a real estate office. And they're like, what are you talking about? You can't put a tax program on a laptop. There's security issues. You can't do that out. You got to do that. People got to come to your office, and it's a professional setting. All these ideas that I had caused a lot of friction, honestly,
Mm.
in my youth,
Mhm.
whenever I was working for other people. And it was
Mhm.
because all the visions and all the things that I had that I thought would help their businesses, they didn't see it, right? They just thought I was some crazy 20, 30-year-old who's trying to tell them how to run their business.
Right.
And I valued my value when you're talking about values. I valued how to serve that client at the highest level. And unfortunately, you know, the people I worked for didn't, I don't want to say they didn't have those same values, but they didn't see what I saw, or they didn't see the inefficiencies that I saw in their
Right.
planning, that I felt like I felt called to help people with that, and that's where I had a lot of resistance, I guess you could say, throughout my
Yeah,
career
yeah, that's
because of
brilliant.
that.
So basically your appreciation of your customers, your empathy with where they're at, and your ability to see, more streamlined approaches, and the ability to see the different market verticals that were like adjacent and
Yes.
right there, and opportunities that were right there. These were all
Yes.
brewing inside you and creating this tension, right, between like you and
Yes.
the boss and the business owner. And
Yeah.
then
A
okay,
lot.
okay. So then there must have been a breakthrough point where you finally like were true to yourself and was like, "All right, I gotta start my own business because it's clear."
Yes.
So what did that
Yes.
what did that look like?
Oh, that's a great man. So I'd like to say that I did that all on my own and that the Lord just parted the ways. But the coolest thing is I was blessed with the opportunity on April 27th of 2020
Mhm.
to start my own CPA firm and investment firm and coaching firm, because I was fired in the middle of tax season, in the middle of COVID, in the middle of, I had 5 children by then, right? So, and yeah, it was tough, but the coolest thing that I can tell you is they messaged me on like a Saturday afternoon or something, and was like, "Hey, Mike, can you be at the office Monday morning?" And I looked at my wife and I'm like, "Hey, I've had this happen before." She goes, "Honey, there's no way they're gonna fire you in the middle of tax season, in the middle of COVID. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way they would do that. They know you don't, whatever." And I'm like, "Honey, I think this is it. This is the Lord is finally get to start our business, right?" Um, And that's exactly what happened, and it was so cool. We sat there for like 10 minutes, did small talk, and then finally the husband looked at me and goes, "Mike, we're gonna have to let you go." And I said, "Thank you." I cut him off in the middle of him, like, giving his speech, and I said, "Thank you." And he looked at his wife, and he's like, "What?" And I said, "Thank you for listening to the Lord and what he told you to do, because I haven't been listening to him for 10 plus years." And they both looked at each other and just like breathe a sigh of relief, right? Because they're just like, "Oh, wow, that was a lot easier than they thought," you know? And the coolest thing, Jonathan, the coolest thing for me is the reason why that happened, right, was because back in 2016 when I took that job, I also became a financial advisor. So I got my 6, 63, 65, and 7 license when I started working for that CPA firm. And I said, listen, I want to do investments for clients and do their tax returns and help with bookkeeping, right? Can I do that? And they said yes. So I started another stream of income at that time because I knew I had 5 kids, or I had 3 kids at that time. Yeah, 3 kids. So I was like, I needed more streams of income. So I started doing investments. Okay. So they allowed me to come work there. I also negotiated a very good salary plus commission. I know my skill set is to bring in new clients, so I had a very strong commission structure to that. So by the time that came around, like, I knew financially they were struggling. I knew that they were paying me way more than that they could technically afford just based on my salary. And I also was making income through doing investments, you know. And then I also because the investment side, and I started the investments in 2016 before I was let go. The reason why I let go was actually finally let go was because I started my own coaching business also. So Kingdom Financial, my company now, was started in December of 19. And the vision for that was I wanted to be able to help people with their personal finances that maybe they had a couple $100,000 invested in their business, right? And it's in their business bank account, and they had plans for that, and they didn't want to put it in a brokerage account like the investment team that I was working with at the time. They're like, you need to get that in the market. You're losing out on all kinds of marketability, whatever. I'm like, no, they don't. They need to do something else. But they have bigger plans. They have other strategies that they're going to do personally. So I became a Dave Ramsey financial coach at that time. To just basically, my whole career has just been like, how do I add another arrow to my quiver, right? How do I add another service that I can help clients with? And that's how I'm the overstepping accountant, right? So I do taxes, investments, estate planning, and like personal financial coaching. Anyway, so in 19, whenever I started doing that, my plan was after tax season of that year was to start helping people with their personal finances and tax coaching. That's what I
Mhm.
planned on doing. I told the owners on April 20th, whenever tax season got extended that year, on April 20th, I called them and I said, hey, I know I'm already doing investments for clients, but I also want to start helping with their personal finances and doing personal financial coaching. And they said that was the final straw for them. They felt like if I did start the coaching business, because they wouldn't back it up, they wouldn't allow me to do it through their business. That's what I started out. I wanted to do that through their business, but they wouldn't allow me to do it through their business. And then when I told them on the 20th of April that I was going to do that, I was fired directly 1 week after I had that conversation with them, because they felt if I started the personal coaching and the business coaching and stuff, they felt like I would eventually leave them and take a lot of their clients, which I understood their concern. And yeah, so they basically fired me right then. I thank them. Fortunately, their plan business wise for me not to do what the Lord blessed me with the ability to do, which is call somebody within 5 minutes of being fired and saying, hey, can I do tax returns out of your tax office? Which was more than 35 miles. They had a non compete. And unfortunately, one of the spouses of the couple planned on enforcing that non-compete and making it to where I could not earn income for my family, which is an unfortunate fact. But God had a different plan, and I had a business partner that I networked with before that was 36 miles. Her office was 36 miles away from their location, and I had a laptop by the close of the next day after being fired. I had a laptop with the tax program on the laptop, and I was doing people's tax returns
Mm.
that very next day after being fired.
Mike, tell me a little bit about the impetus to do the personal coaching. That must have come from somewhere. Yeah, it's an arrow in your quiver. It's another skill set. Were there individuals that you were encountering who you recognized needed that kind of help?
Oh man, yes. There was everyone. I just feel your business finances runs to your personal finances, runs into your estate planning, your retirement planning. Like everything just runs together, and that's what I was chasing. Right, my whole career I was chasing. I had the clients, I had this issue with their finances, but then they had this other issue, but I couldn't help them with. It's like I just
Uh-huh.
kept chasing. How do I help people? How do I help people? And I get cold chills. You ask me that question because I didn't find out. This is so crazy to say this right now. I didn't find out in the like subconsciously, I think, where that all comes from until just the last several years. So uh, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. So his whole life, he started out in like age 13. like running his own businesses in East St. Louis, and then growing up, and then he ended up that business went under. Then he went and worked at a factory for a couple of years, and he went and he was a bad employee. Like myself, I'm similar to my grandfather, not a very good employee. Then he started another business, started a gas station that went for several years, and then he unfortunately wasn't good with his finances, so he lost that. Then he went back, and so he had this. His whole career was working for the corporate. He worked for Monsanto for a while, in the Agent Orange department, right, where there was just all kinds of chemicals and horribleness going on. Anyways, he worked there for a while, and then he started his own business again. And then the city made some changes, and anyways, the moral story is that he was back and forth from corporate world to running his own business. Where unfortunately, his very last business that he had at age 46 went bankrupt in the business. Him and my grandmother unfortunately got a divorce, and he committed suicide at age 46.
Mm.
And I didn't know that, suicide whenever I was younger. I was actually 1 year old. I was a 1 year old whenever he did it. So I never knew him, right? I never have any memory of him.
Mhm.
And suicide, unfortunately, in our family, like we didn't really talk about much. We never had conversations about it. I knew Grandpa owned his own businesses, but really just in the last 2 or 3 years, I started asking my mom and my aunts about and really explaining to them what I do in my business, and they're all like, "Man, your grandpa could have used somebody like you. Your grandpa could have used somebody
Mm.
like you." And I think for me, that's the drive I have now. Just really being there for business owners, and like, because the Lord blesses everybody with his own genius, right? Where they're my superior at so many different things in their life, right? Like a technician, right? My grandpa could fix anything on anything that had an engine he could fix, right? The car, a boat, a tractor. That was all of his businesses throughout his career, was always wrapped around some kind of, a gas station that he also worked on vehicles, or a boat rental place where they also sold boats and worked on boats, right? He was very mechanical, but he was
Yeah.
horrible with his finances. Horrible. My grandma tried to help him through different businesses, which was a huge strain on their marriage, right? One of my aunts, I didn't know this. She was actually basically, she was in high school doing his bookkeeping for him and tried to help him save his last business. And for me, I had this drive. I cared so much about my clients' businesses for years, even before I really knew why. Um, and then really when I made this shift a couple years ago, which we kind of get on that later, but when I made this shift a couple years ago, getting more narrow focused, my aunt who actually worked for me part time said, "Man," and she's like, "You're changing people's lives here, Mike. You're changing people's legacies. Like multi-generational wealth is like what I try to create for clients." And and now I know like where that ah, yeah, that drive comes from.
It's very powerful. That's amazing. It's kind of like God knew all along, and then he reveals it to you at this later point when you're already servicing people that way. What a beautiful thing. And it's fascinating how you're answering his call, these different visions that you have moving forward, take you into the line of business you do, the breadth and width, the different verticals that you're engaging. I've never heard of anyone engaging all the verticals you do. I've heard financial services people, I've heard accountants, I've heard coaches, I've heard, will help you with your personal finance. I've never heard anyone bring all four of those together into one package. I mean, that's quite incredible. And to have God just kind of like say, yes. And here's one reason, one
Right.
very, very
Yes.
personal reason why. What a beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful thing. That must have really propelled you at that point to be like, yeah.
Well, I've questioned so many different things throughout my career.
Hmm.
I've questioned so many different things, and like why this, why that. And like I look back on so many different things that happened throughout my career, and it's like, thank you. You know what I mean? And, just thinking back on people that I've worked for before that, just were not necessarily maybe good people. I mean, all the different things that you go through in your career, right? Like
Hmm.
there's so many things that I look back on that there's no negative, right? Like seriously, like people are always, like all the bad things that happened to me were there for a reason that helped me learn what I'm learning now, right? And the good things happen to help remind me of where I need to go to, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing that a lot of people I have clients, so many right now that just have different struggles going on, right? Fill it in: family, friends, business, whatever, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, I tell him all the time, like he's going to use it for his glory, right? There is a lesson in here. We just got to figure out what it is, right? And more, what I usually say really is, what's the opportunity, right? Because all the struggle you're going through, there's an opportunity here that you can't see, or that you don't want to, or that you don't want to look at. There is no problems. There's just opportunities to either change or push through, right? And maybe there might be, you may need to pivot and make a little change in the business, or maybe it's just no, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. And boom, you're going to make it happen. Right. And you just fight through the resistance. And I think, um, I'm not the best. I'll just say this: I'm not the best at telling people, you know, because you got to figure that out on your own, right? I always say I'm not God, right? I can't tell you what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to go, but I can just what I try to do for my clients and even people that are my clients. I did 10 free consultations last month with clients that I will not ever pay me anything, but I was able to look at their 50 list of 50 things they have on their list, their goals, and I can say, hey, these next three are the most important. It's going to help you get the fastest to your goal, your long-term goal that you have, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's the zone of genius that the Lord blessed me the ability to do is decipher all of those different things with, like you said, all those different areas, right? Your estate planning, your bookkeeping, your payroll, tax prep, tax strategy, the new OBBBA, right? The new tax law change that happened July 14th, right? People are freaking out about that. For me, it's opportunity, right? A lot of accountants that I work, they're like, oh, I can't stand they're changing the tax code again. I'm like, opportunity,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
is it good or bad opportunity? I don't know, but it's opportunity, so in my opinion, that's just how I just live my life and build
Sure.
my business. So
So we
yeah,
moved through early life, we moved through college and career, early career, we moved through starting your own business, and then you had a pivot. You used the word pivot a moment ago. You had a pivot
yes,
recently, a few years ago. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What was going on that made you realize the need to take that pivot?
yeah.
And then
Yep.
what was the pivot and what were some of the results from it?
Yeah, so the Lord was I was the all three businesses were growing like crazy. So in January of 20 or yeah, April of 2020, basically, we started Kingdom CPA Services. I also was, I was working with a financial investment firm at that time, and then we also started Kingdom Financial, where I started just doing personal financial coaching and tax strategy coaching. Okay,
Okay,
so
so just
all
real
three of those
that was very
businesses,
fast. Just
yeah,
like
three separate entities. Yeah,
so
sorry,
one
go
was a
ahead.
CPA business?
CPA firm.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Other was
Yep.
investment services,
Yes, sir.
and the third one
With a
was
with a separate team.
okay.
The third one was actually Kingdom Financial, my company now.
Mhm.
It started out as basically just helping people with their personal finances. We would
Okay.
charge people $50 a month, and at the time that we started it, one of my coaching buddies said, "I don't think you can charge people more than $50 a month for the service, Mike." And I'm like, "You think I can charge 50, right?" And now, if you go through my services I offer now, it's like really I charge $50 a month. But the point is like that's where we started, and all three of those businesses were growing like crazy.
Okay.
The CPA firm in that first summer from April till October of that year, tax season was extended till October of that year. And that first year basically brought in like 90 tax returns, and then that next actual tax season in 2021 we brought in I want to say it was like 300, 200, almost 300 tax returns. The next year it was
Wow.
a 400 or 500 tax returns. So it was just like growing like crazy. And my whole career, honestly, Jonathan, is it's been a story of being a blessing and then a burden. So I mean that because I started the CPA firm with two business partners. Actually, I hired both of them at the last firm I worked for. Whenever I got fired that morning, I left. They both texted me and said, "Hey, what are we doing?" And I said, "You're both going to keep your jobs, and I'll be in touch." Right. So anyway, so that first tax season, that first tax season we started working together. One was retired IRS, so she worked for the IRS for 30 years, and one was retired Air Force, right? So they were two great business partners from my perspective. Very, very knowledgeable, just amazing people. I love them to this day. But I went from being a blessing in building this business with them to within that first tax season, they're like, Mike, we don't want to do 300 tax returns. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're going to build thousands, we're going to do thousands of tax returns. So it just started growing like really fast. And then the investment side and the coaching side just really started taking off. Fast forward, a couple years later in 2022, I realized there's no way I can continue doing all three of these and be an amazing husband, be an amazing father, and you know what I mean, and do the other things that are important to me. So at that time, I really started looking at what can I do different, and that's where our virtual CFO subscription started. Okay, because at that time, from 2020 until 2022, we would say I would meet with somebody and I'd say, "Oh, you want to just do bookkeeping? We got you. Here's a quote for that. Oh, just taxes? We'll do that. Oh, you just need help with estate planning? I got an attorney friend that can do that for you. You need help with you're selling your business? I got another friend that can help you with that. So all those different things people need help with, I would either refer out or we did in house. In 2022, I said, let's start a subscription where a client just pays us $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And we just do all those things for them. No friction, right? No, hey, you should go set up a living trust. And they don't do it because they got to pay a lawyer $5,000 to do it. we're going to include that in the subscription. No resistance of, hey, you need to get a QuickBooks account to start paying payroll. We pay for that part of the subscription. They pay us one monthly amount, right? So we started that in 2020 or 2022, I'm sorry. And then in 2024, we were at a spot where we basically graduated 95% of our clients. So after reading the book, reading lots of great books, but Dan Sullivan is my guy here. Who, Not, How, Gap in the Gain, and 10X is easier than 2X. All three of those books really gave me a basis to really build what I'm building. We had 600 plus clients at that time in all three of those business entities. And I started a collective collaborative partnership with other business owners. And I gave away 95% of our clients to other CPAs, other bookkeepers, other accountants, other coaches. I didn't sell the book of business. I just said, here's your clients. And I matched my clients up with them. And that again is a story of being a blessing, not a burden. So I had a lot of CPA friends of mine that I was like, hey, I got clients to send you. And they're like, all right, send as many as you can. Then within the first month, they're like waving the white flag, like, hey, we can only take 10 brand new clients a month. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I had to go out and find more people to send clients to. So that's where I'm at now, right? So from 2020, some January of 24, we basically had 40 clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the vision changed from, at one time in 2020, I felt like I was building a business, would have thousands of clients and hundreds of employees and, go really, really wide and help people in just one area. But what I found over the years is how I truly felt people is going deep, going depth, right? Not just surface level, just helping with bookkeeping or just taxes or just accounting or just whatever, right? It's how do you stack all those up on each other and holistically help people collect all those dots, right? Connect all those dots in all the things they got going on. And the one analogy I use for a lot of clients is one time, it was like, say me, you, and another friend of ours are blindfolded. Okay, Jonathan. So we're all three blindfolded. And somebody put something in your hands and we're like, hey, Jonathan, explain what you're touching. You're grabbing this thing and you're like, hey, it's kind of like a wiry thing. And it's, I don't know, it feels like like a snake, but it's also like hairy or whatever. And then I'm feeling something and I'm grabbing it and I'm like, it feels like a tree trunk and it's, this big thing. And then another friend of ours who's a financial advisor is rubbing this thing and he's like, it's muscular. It's like a snake or something, or I don't know, something strong. We all take our blindfold off and we're all describing the right thing, but we're describing an elephant, right? And one of us is describing the tail. One of us is describing its leg. It's like a tree trunk. And one of us describing their trunk, right? It's like a, muscular, whatever, snake, whatever. So what I found is the best advice you can give somebody is holistically, right? Like the entire elephant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with most people's finances, it takes a long time to get everything together, right? So the analogy of, how you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So that's what I help my clients do really is figure out what is the big elephant, what is their big goals. And then they meet with me once a month and we help them strategically get close to those goals every single month,
Okay.
by looking at a holistic picture, so
Okay.
a lot of my times, my ideal clients will say, I talked to my financial advisor and they said I should do this, but I need to talk to my accountant to figure out this piece. And then you talk to your accountant, your accountant's like, yeah, you need to do this, but then you need to talk to a lawyer because I'm not comfortable telling you that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm the crazy guy. I'm the overstepping accountant that says, you know what, come talk to me and I'll tell you all those pieces you need to figure out. And then I not only just talk about it, like I have the team that implements it and
Mm-hmm.
actually makes it come to fruition. Because I think that's what most business owners need, right? Is they need the ability to delegate the stuff it's not their skill set. And then they need to focus on the things they are good at. And that's what I help clients do on a daily basis.
It's wonderful, Mike. I just want to make sure I understand properly. So someone comes to you for a holistic view of their finances, their business, their personal, etc. Um, you then, so if someone needs CPA services today, you would delegate that out to a different firm?
If I actually just met with a client right before this meeting, a
Uh-huh.
potential client,
Uh-huh.
and his biggest pain point is that his current accountant is not responsive enough
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't get him accurate financial. So so the business owner cannot make good business decisions because he's basing all of his decisions off of stuff that's been a month ago. And more importantly, what a lot of my clients complain about is that I try to look at clients' picture like I'm driving down a vehicle looking through the windshield, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
windshield's way bigger than looking through the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Most accountants and most financial advisors and even lawyers are looking in the rearview mirror, looking at what happened last month, what happened last year to
Mm-hmm.
base what they need to do going forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? Most of them don't want to proactively look at your 3-year goal is this. Well, guess what? Then every year you need to hit these benchmarks. And then this year you need to hit this benchmark every quarter. right? And that's what I do for clients is I help them break down that long-term picture. So I say all that to say, if somebody just isn't happy with their, like this one gentleman that I just met with said, his biggest complaint is that his accountant isn't very responsive, and that's about it. If I look at his tax return and he's set up in the most tax efficient manner possible, if I look at his estate plan and he's set up as most tax efficient way possible with his estate plan liabilities, he's good, and he has a rock solid foundation, then I'm probably going to refer that person to one of my collaborative partners and say, just be responsive, help this guy strategize and help him do right. I'm going to refer that away. But to answer your question directly, this gentleman might or might not be an ideal client of mine. I don't know yet, because if there are ways that I can save him $20,000 this year by doing one of my tax strategies, then of course there's value there. If he has no living trust, he has nothing set up, but he has multiple business entities, then his whole financial future is built on sand. He's got to get that shored up, right? So if does that make sense? So if there are value adds that I can provide through our subscription, then I say, hey, these are the things you should do. And this is what and I would say, this is my irresistible offer, right? Because you're going to pay me in 1 year. And the client I just picked up, he actually, this is fun. We just got our very first sports agent. So he's an NBA sports agent
Okay.
making several $100,000 a year. His wife is also very successful in her business, making a couple $100,000 a year. They're my ideal clients, because they're at a spot where a lot of their tax deductions go away, right? Whenever you start hitting that income level. So a lot of my strategies are going to help him. So in his case, in this one newer client's case, his two strategies that I'm going to help him do are going to pay my fees for the next 2 years, right? And he's also going to go, yeah, he's also going to get a bookkeeper every single month. He's also going to get somebody to do his payroll and tax strategy. And he's going to meet with me for financial coaching every single month. So for him, it's like a no brainer, right? It's like, pay me $1,500 a month, and you're going to save that just in taxes over the next 2 years, right? That's the irresistible offer I try to do for clients. So to answer your question, yes, if someone comes to me and they have everything else, like they're rock solid foundation, and they generally only need, a really good bookkeeper, a really responsive accountant, then I refer those away. But what I have found, Jonathan, is most of my clients come to me whenever they have a big pain point. Like they just wrote a check to the IRS for 40 grand or something. And they're like, oh, this is horrible.
Hmm.
I need a new accountant, or I need a new whatever. Most of them come to me and say, it's like, say they just got in a car accident, right? And they're like, my shoulder hurts, my knee hurts, and they go to urgent care or they go to the ER, right? And I'm their doctor, and they show up and they say, hey, my shoulder's messed up, my knee hurts, I'm paying too much taxes, I need to start planning for retirement. And I walk up to them and I put my hand over their jugular vein and I say, well, actually, you're squirting taxes out like crazy. And how about we fix this jugular problem first so that
Hmm.
we can fix the shoulder? Because if you don't fix this problem, like you're not going to have a business next year. So that's the kind of, and that's what I do for a lot of my clients is they come to me with one problem, and then I question funnel them down to figure out what is the real struggle they're having, and
Hmm.
can I provide a solution for them? If I can't, then once again, I'll refer them to somebody that can. If I can, and it makes sense inside of our value proposition, then I bring them on board. And that's the coolest part about only serving 40 clients is I can be very selective on who I
Hmm.
bring in,
Hmm.
because not everybody needs my services. Not once again, majority of the clients I talk to and do free consults with don't make sense for me to serve them. But if I can serve them, it's almost a no brainer when they come on board, because the tax savings and strategizing generally, make up for any kind of uh, it's net positive for them. It's a win-win, right? I mean, it's an truly irresistible offer if it
Right.
makes sense for them. So,
Right. So one of the questions I like to ask is, how does your company critique the industry it's in? In terms of like part of strategy is being able to critique the industry and realize, okay, we need to differentiate this way or that way. But I feel like you so thoroughly answered
yes.
that.
Well, I'll say most accountants don't want to be advisors, right?
Hmm.
And I know I sometimes I speak like the industry is struggling because of that. They don't have to. Once the Lord, some people are put here to just punch numbers in a computer and let the computer spit out data, and that's it. You need people. You need those people, and I don't want to diminish those people at all, right? People that just do data entry, whatever, for a huge company. I mean, unfortunately, of course, I mean, computers are taking over a lot of that work. Of course, they might need to switch things up. But for me, the advisory piece is the piece that I love to do. And it's also the piece that differentiates me the most, because most people don't want to do what I do. Like I said, most financial advisors, they stay away from taxes altogether because they don't know enough about it. And it's honestly because most people don't want to, and I've been told I'm a unicorn, I'm a weirdo, right? Because I have so many different I branch out into so many different areas, right? But like my brain is, I'm always just trying to do more to learn more to serve my clients at a higher level. Like that's just how I always think.
That's beautiful.
And the coolest thing is now though is I've learned with through lots of prayer and lots of other meeting with mentoring with a lot of people way smarter than me is I can know a little bit about a lot of things and I don't have to dig deep. I don't get that certification anymore. Right? I haven't gotten any new certifications since I started my own business, right? Because I know I don't need some certification to serve my clients at a high level anymore. I know now I need to find those people who are those people that can serve them at a high level.
Sure,
The who not how principles,
sure.
and who can I learn on, who can I lean on to help them grow more in their business or in their faith walk or in their, you know, in their, I think what I tell people all the time is you're either green and growing or ripe and rotten. That's in your business. That's in your marriage. That's in your faith. That's in everything. That's in your parenting. You know what I mean? If you're not actively, I mean, I got 5 kids at home, right? My oldest is 16, my youngest is 6. And it's crazy in our house, right? But the
Oh,
coolest thing is, what I would just say is, from my perspective, I need to be listening to good parenting books, right? I need to be figuring out how do I disciple my boys? How do I help them grow to be young men, not little punks like I was in grade school and high school, right? Like I want them to think of women differently than I did at that time in my life. It's something the Holy Spirit's been working on me to not be so ashamed, but I am. I say it out loud all the time. Like the things that I did in my youth, He's still working on my heart to fix and be not, I know obviously He's redeemed everything, but at the same time, like for me, it's just like, man, Mike, why did you do those things? But those are the things that I think I'm put here now to do for my boys, right? To teach them, empower them to not go through those same things. Um,
sure. That's beautiful, Mike. Um, I really like the analogy you drew of the rear view versus the windshield, right? Why do you think the industries that you play in tend toward the rear view?
it's easier to look at data backwards and say, this is what happened last month. This is
Hmm.
what you did, business owner, last year.
Hmm.
You didn't pay enough taxes in. You didn't put this money aside. You. People don't like to take it off the own. I say me. When my clients pay more money than they need, they're my client and they
Hmm.
pay more than I think they need to. I put that on me and say, man, listen, maybe I didn't explain to you last year how important it was for you to make those estimated tax payments, for you
Hmm.
not to owe that money at tax time.
Hmm.
Because I have clients all the time. They're like, I want to be proactive. I want to do this. And then you're like, hey, write a check to the government for 10 grand this quarter. And they're like, well, wait a second. I don't want to be proactive. What do you mean? Like, you want to be proactive or not, right? But I know that's a funny joke, but it's the truth, right? Is some clients say they want to do this, say they want to do that, but that's what I actually help them do. It's like, if you want to be proactive, this is what you need to do. Maybe you don't want to be that proactive. I have clients all the time that say, I don't want to pay any taxes at all. Okay, well, you can do that. I have a great client that owns an excavating company, right? And they're growing like year over year straight up, and I just met with them earlier a couple weeks ago, right? And was talking to them on different strategies. And I said, hey, if you guys are going to keep growing the business and reinvest in the business, then you guys can again not pay any taxes this year on the federal level if you choose to. But that's what this looks like, right? And then the wife, one of the spouses, I won't say if it's male or female, but one of the spouses is like, I don't like to be in that much debt. Right. So let's do a happy medium. Right. So once again, I think that's the things that I kind of help clients do is be more proactive. And to answer your question specifically about the industry, is that financial advisor, they have to own up to what they're doing. And they're going to say, hey, in 2 years, this is the plan. And if they're looking forward, they're putting pressure on themselves, because if they don't make that result happen in 2 years, then they're held accountable. Your accountant, same thing, right? If they're helping you proactively plan and they make recommendations and it doesn't follow through, that's on them, right? And I think people, they want to push all the blame to the business owner. The business owner didn't do this. They messed this up. They didn't do this. Well, I take more responsibility than that. Sometimes my teammates, I'll be honest, my COO, sometimes she's like, Mike, our clients are adults, right? Stop hand holding them. Stop doing this stuff for them. I said, no, listen, they have a weakness and we're here to fill, they're paying us for us to fill that weakness for them, right? So there are times that we probably handhold more. And I have other CPAs, when I tell them what I do, they're like, you do what for your clients? Are you serious? Right? There's stories of Mindy, my COO, connecting one of my clients with somebody to paint her shed or paint her barn, right? And everybody's like, you include barn painting in your VCFO subscription? I'm like, no. But I had the same conversation with this client 2 weeks, 2 meetings in a row about how she's stressed out about this barn paint. And I said, hey, if I help you get that barn painted, can we move on to your next goal? And she's like, yeah. So guess what I did? I helped her get the stinking barn painted because her brain couldn't get past dealing with that stressor, right? So that's what I do, right? Is clients tell me this is my goal, this is what I want to do. And I figure out what are all the external things that are clouding that up. And sometimes that might be having my buddy that does painting go over and paint their stinking barn
Mhm.
to get that stress off their plate so they can focus on what's important. Right.
Right.
And I think that's an example of just how I just try to do something different in the industry. And I'll just say this too. Honestly, there's not many people this is the other reason I say nobody has any competition, because people don't want to do probably what I do. Right. And that's cool with me. My prayer, honestly, is more accountants, more financial advisors, more coaches want to do what I do. And anytime I come across somebody that's interested in it, I give them the whole bank, man. I show them everything. I give them every single thing that I did. I'm very open and transparent. And I've had many friends of mine say, Mike, you need to charge people for that. You need to, whatever, right? Blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I just need to be a blessing, right? I just need to be a blessing, right? And I think um, because there's more business owners out there than I could ever serve. And you know what I mean? There's like more than I could serve my whole eternity. you know, well, till the Lord calls me, not eternity, I'm sorry. Till the Lord calls me home, right? Obviously, there's more than I could ever serve. So if, I think we need more people that are looking through the windshield, but it's more work. That short answer is it's harder. It's harder. It's more stressful, and it takes more work on the advisor's end. And I love that challenge, and most people think I'm crazy for it.
What drives that? What drives wanting to help people in that comprehensive way? Obviously, there's a family background in the story there.
Yeah. I think my grandpa, and then also, I think obviously deep down it's my grandpa's story, right? I think it is deep down in there, right? I think the Lord just like planted that deep in me, but also small business ownership is hard. I mean, if you read E Myth by Michael Gerber, right? That was my first book I ever read in my life. I'll say this was before I got out of college. I never read. This is kind of embarrassing to say out loud, but I never read a book from front to cover all through grade school, high school, or college, which I know is kind of embarrassing to say because now I read books front to cover like crazy. But in '07 in 20, 2007, that's where I really started my personal development journey. And the very first book I read front to cover was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then the second one was E Myth Revisited. And then the third one was What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And the third one was the first one that my mentor gave me. He's like, read this because you've got some bad self-talk, right? But anyways, in E Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber talks about, there's a lot of technicians, there, managers, right? All the different, most people though are just good at a task, and they're good at, and they're like, and maybe they're not good employees like myself, and they just start a business, but they don't have the skill set to do that. Um, Over the years, I've seen that so much that I just felt like people need people in their corner that can fill that gap,
Mhm.
and I just feel strongly that that's what I was called to do. And through the years though, I can look back at different things I did in my career, and I'm like, man, I used to, yeah. And the things I used to do for clients, I wanted it more than they did. There was business owners that I can think of when I was just doing their bookkeeping, where I was doing, people were paying me $200 a year to do their taxes, and I was giving them $20,000 worth of value, and they still weren't listening to me. Right? It's so crazy thinking back. The stuff that I was trying to help people with back in the day, because I just wanted to help them. And now I charge for those services. And every now and then I see a client that is not a client now that I helped back in the day. And I just think of the value I was able to help them with, there's so much enjoyment, so much joy that I get out of just knowing that I helped those clients. And one of the things that's the Lord's put on my heart a lot lately is realizing that the coolest part about that is a lot of times I took a lot of pride early in my career of things I did. Yeah, I did that for them. Yeah, I helped them set that up. And yeah, they're going to save $20,000 a year as long as they have this business because I helped them do these three things or whatever in their business. Like, I've realized there's so many businesses that I've helped that they probably don't even remember that I did those certain things for them, right? There's people that, so my prayer now is, that they don't necessarily remember what I specifically did for them, but I try to figure out a way, how can I bring my faith or the blessings I've received into the relationship to where they can actually have something that sticks,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that's something new that I've been trying to incorporate in what we do. and I'm always every month trying to just level up our services for our clients. Um, because yeah, and there's so many stories I can tell you, just clients in the past that, you know, you think you do all these things for, right? And then really in the end, it's like you were just a piece of their long-term journey. And that's not to belittle what I do, but it's really just to be like, it's not that important. Seriously, like what I do for clients, so many clients think it's so amazing, all the things that I do, but really it's not that important, right? Like, I don't have this rope, but there's a rope that I keep in my office all the time. It's not sitting here because I got a different setup here today, but there's a white rope, big old long white rope, and on the very, very end, there's just this little bitty circle of red, right? And that rope signifies like this little bitty piece of red, like that's our like living here. That's me and my business. That's me serving business owners, right? But that big old white rope at the end, like that's eternity, right? Like that's doing what. So I think I feel called to serve people as best I can in that little piece of red, and I think that's what we're all called to do with everything. And people are not called maybe to do what I do in business. Have a podcast like you have, Jonathan, right? But I think everybody's called in a different area, and you should always be, yeah, green and growing and not ripe and rotten is what I always say. So what can
That's
you
right.
do to be growing and trying to just be live your best, and yeah.
Streams of living water, right?
Yes, seriously. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike,
Yes.
that's beautiful. I just so appreciate your approach to your business, to your clients. I can only imagine what an immense blessing it must be to work with you, and I'm very thankful we could spend this time together.
Yes. Well, I appreciate what you're doing. And I think it's huge. We talked before this just about some examples of people that you've been blessed to interview. And I just pray that, you know, uh, through everybody's journey, right? Is there's times where, if you'd have interviewed me in the early 2000s, this would have been a way different interview. Um, but at the same time, but I think it would have been a good interview. I seriously, like, I know it might not have exactly, it would have definitely not have flowed the same. But there's so many things you can learn from anybody in their journey, right? And I think, me on the other side of where I'm at now, like I know where my blessings come from, but I'll be honest, my whole career, I didn't know where they came from. So I think for me, what I try to do on a daily basis is meet people where they're at in those tough situations, and then help them find their way through that. And that's something that I feel called to do. And yeah, just feel blessed to be able to do it on a daily basis.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yes.
It's really beautiful.
You're very welcome.
All right. With
You're
that, I'm
definitely
going to.
welcome.
Who are you looking to engage with now?
Yeah. So our virtual CFO subscription now is really focused on serving entrepreneur clients in every area of their finances. So our ideal client is someone who is very complex, right? So our ideal client usually has several different businesses. Their current accountant is someone that, is not as responsive so we love helping small business owners. So I always say the messier, I don't want to always say the messier, the better, because if their books are a total mess, they probably aren't the best client because we require a lot of our clients too. That's the other piece. The clients that work with us, they want to make changes, right? They want to know what their finances are. They really want to be proactive. But I always say clients complexity is our specialty, right? So the more stuff they got going on, the more value we can add. So really people that are wanting to build multi-generational businesses, right? And maybe they have several different entities that they have set up. Maybe they don't know why they have several different entities, or maybe they have one big entity that probably needs to be set up into several different entities. Those are the clients that we can offer a lot of value adds to. And then like the sports agent that just came on board last week. He this last year he wrote a $40,000 check to the IRS. And his accountant pretty much told him, like, hey, you should be happy that you had to write a $40,000 check to the IRS, right? Because he's so successful. Entrepreneurs don't like being told you should be happy you wrote the IRS a $40,000 check, right? So in his case, we're going to save him probably $20,000, $30,000 on this year's tax return alone. And then from there, help them with estate planning and structuring your businesses the correct way. So that's who we're looking for, honestly, Jonathan, is just business owners that want that holistic approach. They're not looking for just one solution, and they like efficiency. The other thing too that I do for most of my clients, and I recommend they do, is most clients don't meet with their lawyer every month or their financial advisor every month or their accountant every month. Well, I meet with them every single month, and I help them make progress in all those areas of their finances and their life and
Hmm.
their business.
Hmm.
So it helps them really shorten that gap
Hmm.
between ideation to actually execution, right?
Hmm.
And that's what we do on a monthly basis, is help clients. Most of our clients hit goals that they plan on making over 5 years or in a year of working with us, honestly, because we stay on top of it and we just help them implement as fast as possible.
Sure.
So those are the clients that we're looking to serve, right? Are people that are really either looking to scale or they're really want to make major changes to win at work and home, which is what we focus on.
Excellent. Excellent, Mike. I think that's it.
Awesome.
Mike, thanks for being with me on the Work and Worldview
Yes,
podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to meeting again at some point in the future.
I would love that, Jonathan. Thank you so much, sir. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.